Go, but
I'm a kid.
yeah, you are. There are some people that are kid at heart. They have a youthful attitude about them always. So that's a good thing. I had quite the interesting weekend. There was 25 of us that went to the choir to choir this weekend. So I think we had about 18, 19 teenagers, and then a handful of us adults. And then they all stayed at my house Friday night. Then we went back all day Saturday and finished up about 11 o'clock last night. And
Wow.
it was a full weekend being with teenagers and also being on the U of O campus. It's really fascinating watching teenagers grow up, because there's a natural inclination within them to want to be drawn towards someone of the opposite sex, right? There's a natural inkling and desire within them that God created, we've all been there, of wanting to hook up. I guess it's a horrible way to say it. And I'm not saying all of our teenagers were like that, because I'm just saying I was in Matthew Knight Arena with about 3,000 teenagers, right? You can see, just by watching, you can just see the natural instincts going on within man and woman. And then we're on University of Oregon campus and walking around and doing lunch there and outside and watching the college students. And you're like, wow. And you see these guys pursuing a girl, right? And guys, when you pursue a girl, it's amazing. You work your schedule around, you fiddle with things. I mean, you make it happen. And girls, when you're pursuing that guy, you're pulling strings behind the scenes, and you always know where that guy's at. You know what I'm saying? When you're in pursuit of someone, it's amazing what that does to us. And even as adults, when we're pursuing someone, it's amazing, how consuming it is. Well, I realized a little bit this weekend, God's pursuing us. God's been pursuing us for a long time. Behind the scenes, pulling all the strings, trying to steer and guide. He's always knowing where you're at, always knowing what you're doing, always trying to do things that's going to catch your attention and capture your heart. And I find that amazing that we have a God that's constantly pursuing us. A lot of times we always have to think about us pursuing Him and us doing the things to catch His heart and to chase after Him. And in reality, He's already caught someone's caught someone's heart. He is pursuing us. And what's that?
He's caught us. He wants us.
He's caught us. Okay, He's pursuing us. But He wants more of our heart. And He's not going to stop. And He's going to keep pressing on. I want you to have a little bit of a conversation with God about that. About Him pursuing the totalness, the entirety of your heart. I like that. And it's going to lead into where we're going this morning. So Lord, open up our eyes to the love and passion that you have for us, that you want to be with us, that you desire us, that you love us, and that you want to share yourself with us fully. Open up our eyes. Reveal to us a little bit more of your heart along this line, Lord. what's it mean that God's pursuing you, or what's He showing you about His pursuit after you in your heart? Yeah, Scott?
I just realized when you asked that God has offered His whole heart to me. All of it.
All of it.
He doesn't have anything to hide.
Yeah,
And there's nothing else in this universe like that.
yep,
Everything else doesn't want their heart to be seen.
yeah.
But He's offered
Hold back,
all
hold
of it.
back.
All of it.
Yeah.
And I've been afraid to take it.
Hmm.
But
Yeah,
it's been offered.
good recognition. I mean, yeah. Doug?
Yeah, that's always thing we speak to him. He's always speaking to us.
Good.
We, sometimes we can't hear because we're talking to him, we're praying.
Or we're distracted.
We
Yeah.
should stop and listen
Yep.
and hear him speak to us.
Yep. Good. Larry?
To me, it was always a matter of God has gave me that thirst for righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
that if it wasn't for His love for me and my love for Him, I wouldn't care. But it's that part of the Lord instilled in me, that thirst for righteousness is, I want to please Him, you know, I want to please Him for what He's done for me. Even though I fall far short, it's that draw, He draws me with that thirst.
Good.
And that's that living water He talks about.
Yeah. And that is part of pursuit, that whole thing, is you want to win that heart. You want to please that person. Good. Ellen?
I kind of cheated because I was there this weekend too, but
Yeah.
one of the things that really struck me from the beginning, talking about pursuit, is when, I know, is when
Oh,
they were
that's
showing
you.
a picture of the roaring lion full of fire chasing the man
Yeah.
and pursuing him. And the one guy was talking like from Jesus, and he said, after I went through all that pain and suffering and everything else, if he comes, just gonna let it drop at that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just go, okay, check me out or not. I'm gonna chase after you, because if it meant that much to me,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna let it go there. And that visual was of, not that it didn't show him suffering, but the visual of all he went through. Just
Yeah.
to say, okay, choose me or not, I'm done. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Sharon?
Well, I've thought two thoughts. First, I did think it would speak to me through your word, through your spirit. And that's where, you know, I feel like because I have His Spirit who's in me and He's with me, He's always speaking to me.
Yeah.
But I also thought about how there's been even recently, God has throughout my life protected my life.
Yeah.
And this last one's a doozy. I could have been killed right on the highway going the wrong direction, on the Ranger Highway. And it was 11:30 at night, I couldn't see it, it was determining, and I went the wrong way on Beltline.
None of us have ever done
I
it.
went about, no, this is a big one, because it was on the wrong side of Beltline.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And, you know, I can't take that for granted, but his spirit and his strength, and he's always ahead of me, actually, foreseeing what's gonna happen, and he's ready to help you.
Yeah.
And he makes sure there's no traffic on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's always been there, and so it's not just speaking to me, but being there for me. And how can you not be aware of his spirit?
Yeah.
He's always there with you. Everywhere you go, he's with you.
Yeah. Good. Good. Well, fortunately, we don't have any police officers in our service here that could, no. It's interesting, because, you know, there's a lot about the choir of fire that talked about God pursuing us, and it really lines up with my message a lot this morning. We're talking a series about what happened after the cross, what happened because of the cross. And this morning, we're looking at there's no more separation. There's no more separation. But we kind of like separation. I built a fence this last summer around my property. About 12, some of you helped, thank you, David, and a few others. About 11 or 1,200 linear feet of fence to get to do the half of my property, and the other half is already done. And it's fantastic now that it's done, you know, and you feel safer, you know, you can let the dog out, you don't worry about the dog running out into the road, and, you know, you just let the kids can go out and play. You just, you know, you feel safer. And we like to put up walls because it feels like it protects us a little bit, right? I got a few pictures of walls here. You probably recognize the Great Wall of China. It's tough to tell, but how long is that thing? Yeah, long, 1,500 miles, going east to west to separate Mongolia and China. It's an amazing feat of mankind. You know, you look at the train that thing went over and the amount of rock, and it is an amazing structure. It's an amazing wall. We got another wall here, the Berlin Wall. So, you know, I think every one of us remember that. The separation of East and West Germany, and how that basically split a country into two. June 12th, 1987, Ronald Reagan, stood up and said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall," right? And 2 years later, a little over 2 years later, it came down. And what used to be two now is back to a one unified country. We like walls. We like walls, we like boundaries, we like parameters. In different ways. Some of you are free-spirited, and you're like, I want no boundaries, I want no, but there's still walls that we have. We fence in our property. We have walls in our houses to create space. Your bedroom, your bathroom, these are good, there's some good walls that, create space. Sometimes you have that room in your house that you can go to, close the door, and just, everyone knows, leave me alone. I'm in my space, right? We put up those walls like that. We have walls of unforgiveness. We have relational walls to keep people away. Do you have someone in your life that you've kind of put up a wall to just keep away, right? And you treat them you're a little bit testier with them. You're a little bit more straightforward than you would be with a normal person. Maybe a little ruder than you would be with a normal person because you're trying to create a boundary, a separation. So why do we put up walls? Why do we put up walls?
To protect ourselves.
To protect ourselves. Yeah. We want, for security, to protect ourselves, for self-preservation. That is a very, I don't know if that's a worldwide thing. Maybe, I think it's an act, a result of the fall of man and the sinful nature within us. But we are big, and especially here, on self-preservation. Big on self-preservation. You go into the East, the honor-shame cultures, they are huge on preserving their image and how they look and their honor and their family value. They are huge on that. Here in the West, we might not be as huge on honor, shame, but we still are very big into self-preservation. But the challenge is we self-preserve ourselves, and it separates us from God. It keeps us at a distance. We put up walls between us and God all the time, and aren't even necessarily aware of it. So I want to look at a work that Jesus did on the cross. No more separation. Ephesians 2, verses 14 through 18. For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by setting aside in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. He came and preached peace to you who are far away, and peace to those who are near. For through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit. So let's talk about peace. See, we like to put up walls for protection, for safety, to keep the peace. Jesus came to obliterate the wall to bring peace. It's a complete opposite perspective. But in this passage, there's two walls that broke down, that Jesus broke down in this passage. There's two walls. The first wall was between the Jews and the Gentiles. There was a wall, a big wall, culturally, between the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews, can it be safe to say they looked down on the Gentiles? They did not consider them favorably. It was not just not honorable to hang out with them. It was bad.
We're dogs.
Yeah, you just don't hang out with them. You don't, you don't. So in Jerusalem, they had the temple, And the temple, there were two courts in the temple. You have the inner court, which is only for the Jews. Then you had an outer court, which the Gentiles could come and be a part of. But there was separation. I got pictures here. So, if you can see, you have the outer court of things. By the way, this here is your western wall. This here is all that stands right here, where they go do put their things in the wall over on this side. But outside here, you see the court of the Gentiles, right? And any Gentile can come in there. This is where Jesus would get thoroughly ticked because they've turned it into a marketplace. So the Gentiles would come into there. That's the big space. But then you had the inner sanctuary. That would be when Moses is giving instruction to building the curtains and all the dividers and stuff. That would be the parameters, and that would be the making of the temple, or not the temple, of the tabernacle that was instructed for Moses. So inside, if you look on the right, keep going back. Go back, you're ahead of me. If you look there on the right of the inner temple there, you have a court of women. So you have a space where the women can go and hang out. And of course, the other side would be the court of men. That's right. So they have multiple entrances coming into the tabernacle. But they had, out of Josephus, by the way, a historian, says that there were 13 entrances coming into this tabernacle. There's 13 different entrances coming into it. This diagram here shows 9. And I've looked at other ones, but some pictures don't translate onto by the time you make it big enough for everyone to see, it gets so blurry. So I've seen others that showed all 13. This one does not. 13 of them. But they had these headstones. If we go to the next one, they actually have this, and this is one of those pictures you blow up and it just completely, you can't tell. But there is Jewish writing on this tombstone. And this is what it says. And they had this at every entrance going into the tabernacle. No stranger is to enter within the divided wall and embankment around the sanctuary. Whoever is caught will have himself to blame for his death which follows. Right? They had that at every entrance. And this is one of the only ones that they have the whole inscription. This is in the museum in Istanbul. They discovered it in 1871 in Jerusalem, and it made itself up to Turkey. They have other places around the world. They have partial inscriptions where it's broken in half. But it's this inscription that says, Gentiles, you are dead if you come in here. This is for Jews only. There was a divided wall culturally between the Jews and the Gentiles. Because the Jews, they looked down upon the Gentiles. They were God's chosen people. We are the place, as the Jews say, we are the recipients of God's promise. Here's what it says in Ephesians 2, verses 11 through 13. So the two verses before the one we read earlier. Remember that at that time you were separate from Christ, excluded from citizenship in Israel, and foreigners to the covenants of the promise, without a hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. So there's 5 things that said there that the Gentiles were. They were separate from Christ, separate from God. They were excluded from citizenship in Israel. They were foreigners to the covenants of the promise. They were without a hope. They were without God. But, I love those buts. But, now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away, you who were once separate, you who were once excluded citizenship, you who were once a foreigner to the promises, you who were once without hope, you who were once without God, now have been brought near. And Jesus completely broke this wall of separation. So Christianity is no longer it's not a Jewish religion. By the time Paul's writing this to the Ephesians, by the way, they say that Paul's in prison. Paul understands walls. he's confined in one at this time. But by the time Paul writes this, Christianity has is larger within the Gentile world than it is within the Jewish world. But yet there's another separation that God broke. Not just the passages about the Jews and the Gentiles and his plan to make one, no longer Jew, no longer Gentile, but one new creation called the Christian church. There was also a wall that was broken between God and man. A wall between God and man. This is represented in the wall within the inner part of the temple. Let's see what we got for the next picture.
Troubles.
Huh?
Having troubles.
Oh, we're having troubles. Okay.
Oh.
So, we can't be having technical difficulties. So, the inner part of the temple, remember you had the court of the women that was on that diagram to the right. And then you had the next court where you could come in and it was for the men and the priests on the outside. But inside of that, you have the tabernacle. You have the inner part, the main sanctuary part of the whole thing, right? And that is divided into two parts. You have the holy place, and then you have the Holy of Holies. Priests can come into here. Not even just a Jewish man. Only priests can come in here. In fact, when you read of John, at the beginning of John, with John's dad's name was? Zechariah, thank you. Just wanted to make see if someone's paying attention. So Zechariah is as a priest. His mom's a priest. You got it working? Good. So this would be a diagram of the on the right. This is kind of a computer model of what they think the men's court would look like as you go into, and then you go into the sanctuary. And again, this picture on the left would be every day a priest, they would cast a lot. And a priest would get his lot called, and he would go in, and it was his job to come and light the menorah, and there's also the altar of incense that they would come into, and they would light the altar of incense. It was an honor for a priest to get his name called for it. So Zechariah, that was he did. It's his job, and the rest of the priests would wait outside and they'd be praying for him, right? So he goes in, and he's going in to do his job, whether he's done it before or not, we don't know, but the daily job of lighting the candles and burning the altar on the altar incense. And what's he come in and see? An angel sitting on the altar of incense. Woo! That's not supposed to be there. Wait a second here. Priests only. And how dare you sit on that thing? And so that would be the altar of incense over here to the right. And then you have the curtain. And behind the curtain is where they would have the Ark of the Covenant. And the high priest would only once a year on the Day of Atonement would the high priest or any priest or anyone go into the Holy of Holies. There was a complete separation. So if you look at the temple, you got the Gentiles, and the farther in you go, the more secluded it gets. The Gentiles to the Jews, the women, the men, the priests once a day, the high priest once a year. It gets more and more and more secluded the closer and closer you get to the presence of God. And you had that barrier that was between really man and the presence of where he would rest with the Ark of the Covenant. So then you get this in Mark chapter 15, verses 37 through 38. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And it's fascinating. You read through Mark's account of this, and then he just keeps going on. Wait a second, slow down, Mark. That's a pretty big, profound thing you just said. Slow down. But he didn't need to slow down. His readers understood it. They knew the picture was enough. He didn't need to go into further explanation. That this curtain that they all knew separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies, where the God's presence sat, that curtain ripped in two from top to bottom. And now there was no more separation between man and God. Now there's free access. No longer does you have to be a priest. By the way, the priests, because if you read, we're doing this reading through the 90 days, right? These priests and what they'd have to go through to consecrate themselves to be holy. Wow! Right? They would shave every hair on their head, right? They liked beards. They liked hair. Shave it! Right? They would take a bath. They would wash all their clothes. They would have to do offerings. They would have to go do this ritual just to be clean enough to come and light this, light the candles in the holy place. We're not even not even talking about that one time a year for the high priest. You know what they do for the high priest, by the way? They had a rope around him and they had bells around his feet. Because there were times where the high priest died in there. And they didn't want anyone to have to go get him. Because they don't want to die. So if they heard for a long enough period of time that the bells weren't ringing, they would maybe have we're going to pull tug 3 times. Tug back if you're still alive. I don't know what their signal was, right? But tug, tug, tug. Oh, I didn't feel anything. Come on, and then they'd have to, it was a big deal, that separation between man and God. It was impossible for man because sin separates us from God. It's impossible for man in any way or form to be unclean coming in the presence of God. But because of what Jesus did on the cross, that curtain and that separation and that wall got completely obliterated. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 18 says this, "For through him we both have access to the Father by one Spirit." We both have access to the Father. Jew, Gentile alike. No longer priest, no longer male, no longer just Jew, but Jew and Gentile. We both have full access to the Father. That's amazing. That is amazing. It's no longer a Jewish religion. You don't have to follow the cultural laws of Judaism to be able to receive the promises of God anymore. Right? When you read in Leviticus, these nice rules where it says that you can't plant 2 seeds in the same field. Right? You can't shave the side of your sideburns. Right? The cultural things, these laws, we don't have to follow all these laws anymore. It's okay to shave your beard. Right? It's okay to get a haircut. It's okay to, it's just okay to not to have to be Jew. Because God has broken down the barriers. But the problem is, here's the problem. We still create barriers and walls between us and God. God's obliterated them, but we put them back up. Can you imagine? Your neighbor. You have a neighbor, your kids are the same age. Neighbor says, "Hey, let's take down this fence separating our 2 properties so our kids can play in the backyard easier." Great, so you take down the wall. And then all of a sudden, someone has a change of mind, and 3 days later they build a new one up, right? Wait a second, we just broke this thing down, right? But we do this. We do this. God has broken down the walls of separation, but we like to put them back up. Here's Moses, Exodus 20. Moses is going to go up to Mount Sinai. The people are all out at the base of Mount Sinai. They see the lightning and the thunder. They're terrified. Here's what it says, starting verse 18. "When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain and smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, 'Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die.' Moses said to the people, 'Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you and keep you from sinning.' But the people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was." You see that? You see what the Israelites are doing? You go, Moses, but we want to have a little safety We want to have this barrier, right? We give the Israelites in the desert a bad time always, but wow, how often have we done this? How often have we done this? You go and you tell me, I'm just going to stay back here. We might not think it we might not consciously say it out loud that this is my plan and this is my approach. But how many of you come to church expecting the pastor to have this word from God to teach you everything that how you're supposed to live for the week, and then that's going to be good? You come in and treat me like, yeah, Wayne, thank you for your honesty. But you're treating me like Moses. Not that I'm anywhere. I'm not trying to put myself in that category. But you treat the pastor like Moses, and come and teach me, right? And we'll just stay back here. We do the exact same thing. What type of other type of walls do we put up? We choose the path of ignorance, right? If we don't know, and we just choose ignorance. How guilty can I be? I just didn't know God, right? We kind of put up a wall of ignorance. We follow from a distance. Sometimes God is calling for our life, and we just don't really open up that door. We don't trust. We're afraid. There's tons of different walls that we put up between us and God on how we spend our time, right? That's how I got a wall up on how I'm going to spend my time, what my day is going to look like. What am I willing to do? Am I truly willing to share my faith in Christ with everyone around me? Or am I going to put up that wall and say no to that? We put up walls all the time. 1 John 5:14-15. This is the confidence we have in approaching God. That if we ask anything according to His will, He hears us. And if we know that He hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we ask of Him. So this is the confidence. We have a confidence in approaching God. We can confidently approach God. And even as we studied 2 weeks ago, that you don't have to be perfect to do that, right? That our righteousness is no longer based on what we do, but our righteousness is based on what Christ has done, right? And that's a hard one for us to get. That we can never be righteous in ourselves, no matter how good, no matter how clean. Even the high priest and all his shaving and washing and all the ceremonies he did, sometimes he'll still go in and die, right? I wouldn't want to be the high priest. Can I turn this job down? But so we don't have to be perfect to freely approach God with confidence. We don't. What do walls do?
Separate.
They separate, they protect, they limit, they hide, they insulate. These are just 5 things I came up with. I'm not trying to be too profound. Just saying this is what a wall does. And some of these are great. We need insulation in our house. Sometimes we need protection. Sometimes we need the limitations and separations. And sometimes we need to hide and have our own space. I get it, right? These aren't necessarily bad things until you take that same mentality in a relationship with God. And we put up these walls to separate and to hide. Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve walked with God, talked with God, and then one day they're hiding. He calls out their name and he hears this faint voice out in the bush, hiding, right? And they weren't playing hide and seek. So sometimes they're good, but in God's kingdom, these 5 things, they aren't necessarily good. See, we can trust God. We don't need to follow from a distance, but we do it. It's really, God has our best interest in mind. He has a plan that will be our best. His plan will lead us to be the best person that we could possibly be. I'm not saying it's an easy plan. It's sacrificing, it's selflessness, but it's the best plan that will make us the best person. His plan will take us to a place that will be able to help the most people. His plan leads us to love. His plan brings healing. But we still like to follow from a distance. We like to have our safe zone, where, this is my space. I'm not talking about the website. So, but why in the world would we never accept this plan that has for us our best interest, make us the best people, help us to have the most impact and influence in other people's lives? Why would we not walk in that and fully embrace that?
Fear.
Fear.
Satan.
No, yeah, fear. That's the first thing I wrote down. Fear. The Israelites were at the Mount Sinai, afraid, terrified. You go, we're staying back here. We do that all the time. There's a fear in us to approach God, to walk in His ways always. It terrifies us. What's He going to make me do? What do I have to give up? How foolish do I have to look? What friends do I have to make? Where in the world is He going to make me go? Right? How poverty-stricken am I going to have to live? Right? We are terrified. We get terrified of fully trusting Him. I've said this numerous times in the past. Every time I make a choice based on fear, it's the wrong choice. It's always the wrong choice. Jonah ran out of fear. Peter denied Christ 3 times out of fear. King Saul lost his kingship, his kingdom, out of fear, and the choices that he made out of fear. They wandered in the desert for 40 years out of fear. They saw these miracles, and then they sent the 12 spies in the land, and 10 of them came back and spoke fear to the rest of the Israelites, and they gave in. Fear had negative effect on so many people in the Bible. Because fear is not God's heart. If you're walking in fear, can I tell you, you're not walking where God has you to walk. Because God doesn't operate out of fear. He doesn't operate out of fear. There's 2 situations that we learn how to operate in. The first situation is this. I call it the me first situation. Here's our me first situation. We grew up as a young kid knowing this. Me first. You hear the ice cream truck. Remember that when the ice cream truck used to drive through the neighborhoods? You hear that sound and you hear, me first, me first, me first, right? You want to get in line first. You want to play the video game. It's my turn first. You want the pony ride first, right? Because we want the best selection. We want the biggest piece. We want the rarest color of marble, or we want the focus of attention to be on us. You have those me first situations, right? Can you all relate to that? Any of you have a me first one that you remember growing up? Me first, me first. Anyone?
Sure.
To ride the new bike at Christmas.
What's that?
To ride the new bike at Christmas.
Ride the new bike at Christmas. To be the first one to sled down the hill in the snow, right? To be the first one to, the cat sleeping in my bed, me first, or whatever. But then we have the you go ahead situations, right? We have the me first, but then we've also learned you go first, right? The time where you want someone to go first to test out how cold the lake is. You go first, right? The time where you want your chemistry lab partner to smell the test tube. You go first, right? The time you want someone else to taste mom's spinach concoction. You go first. Why? Because you don't want to take the risk. You don't want to look foolish. You don't want to suffer pain. You don't want to show your fear. Sometimes you don't want to experiment with the unknown. So you want someone else to go first. You got some situations are me first situations. And some situations are you first situations. And we learned this as a kid. And we carry it into our adulthood. And there's some things that we think, I want it because it's beneficial for me. And there's others that we say, oh, you go test the waters first. Let me watch you do it first. And can I say, in God's kingdom, we need to learn how to have that me first mentality. I want to jump in line and experience His thing. I'm not waiting for you. I'm not looking for your example. I want this. I want this. Right? I went online and looked up a list of phobias. Holy moly. Now, there are a lot of those big words that you don't understand that are phobias. Here, I wrote a list of some of them, by the way. Here we go. Aerophobia, fear of flying, right? Some people have a realistic fear of flying. Doug doesn't have a fear of flying, just the crashing, right? Yeah, that was, okay.
Landing to get you.
Landings will get you, yeah. Agoraphobia, a fear of going outside. Claustrophobia, fear of elevators. Some people have to take the stairs. How about this one? Everyone's had this one. Didascalinophobia. If your kid can pronounce it and throw it your way, maybe you can let him stay home for school for a day, right? Fear of going to school, right? Now, I found that one very funny. Gerontophobia, fear of getting old, right? That's a real fear. Glossophobia, fear of public speaking, right? Who here wants to preach next week? Yes, I thought so, right? Here's an interesting one I've never heard of before. Aronophobia,
And how does that have anything to do with heaven?
a fear of heaven. Really fascinating. You know, what that's saying is they have a fear of the afterlife. They have a fear of death. It's rooted in all that. Some of these make sense. Fear of public speaking. Some of these make sense to us. Some of these we can laugh at and say, no way. Fear of going to school. But in reality, there are people that are terrified. There are kids that are terrified to go to school every day. Not just first grade, you know.
Fear of going to the dentist.
Yeah, fear, they have it all. You know what fear does? Fear prevents you from functioning in a healthy manner.
Amen.
That's it. If you look at every one of these phobias, you'll read through the list of them, and it was long. And some of them are very funny, right? I didn't come close to putting all the good ones in there. But they prevent a human being from functioning in a full, healthy manner.
Right.
Responding to God in fear is going to do this. It's going to prevent you from walking in God's plan and promise in a healthy manner. Right? So we put up walls. We put up barriers. And the thing is God has already broken them all. He's not the one putting up the walls anymore. In the Garden of Eden, he had to put up a wall of separation because if man came in front of his presence, they would die. When he tells Moses, Moses says, let me see you. Moses says, you can't look at my face. You will die. The high priest coming into the Holy of Holies will die. Right? God had to put up boundaries of separation for our well-being. But when Jesus broke all those, here's the interesting thing. The walls that go up now are no longer God-made, they're man-made. We separate. We're the ones separating ourselves. We need to learn we need to trust, not give in to fear, and learn how to break down the walls. You know what? I wanted to come up with these really cool plans and ideas on how to break down the walls and barriers between you and God. I couldn't think of anything. Well, no, because it's all fear. You know, we have to learn to trust God. That is it. We have to learn how to trust Him.
We need a fear counselor.
A fear counselor?
I need one.
Well, you know what? I remember.
Holy Spirit.
Myself and my friend had a fear of heights, right? So what we did, we read this book. It's called West Point Way of Leadership. Not a Christian book, but it was a book about West Point and how they treat their officers to overcome fear, or to deal with leadership. And the first step of leadership from West Point Way of Leadership was to face your fears. So my friend and I were in college, we read this book, and we're like, okay. So what we did is we went to a local pool that had the Olympic-sized pool, and we started jumping on the 10-meter platform, right? Not the 3-meter the springboard. So we jump, and I had no fear with that, but my friend Mike was a little on edge jumping in. So we started jumping, then we started diving, then we started doing somersaults, right? Okay, so we spent about an hour on this 10 10-foot springboard. Then we went up to the first platform, right? Doesn't spring anymore, and it's higher. So we jump in, feet first, feet first, feet first, feet first, head first, right? Our whole purpose was to, I want to face this fear of this fear of heights. Then any of you seen this TV show, Splash? Is that what it's called? You know, where some of you like that, where you got these, you're sitting in your living room at home going, oh, come on, just dive, do the somersault with the twist, no fear. Have you looked at how high? Have you been on Amazon and stood at the high platform at Amazon? Right? Which is still not the high, not the 10-meter board. I think it's 7. It's the pool I grew up when we had the 5, 7, 10. So the one at Amazon is that middle, right? And so we would jump off and start diving. The middle one, jump off, dive. We spent about 4 hours at the pool, dive, and just up and never could dive off the top one. It is way the stink up there, right? Whoa! But I still to this day, because of that, I was at Amazon this summer with the kids, dove off that platform. Still to this day, do not have that grip of fear holding me because of facing that fear over and over and over again. I remember when I was younger, I'd go bridge jumping off of bridges, not like really, but like in the, going over rivers, and they would be 30 feet high, and I remember, all my friends would be standing on the edge, and here's Paul, I wouldn't think anything of it, because I faced the fear, and wow, I actually feel more comfortable going head first than feet first, because I actually have more control. Where your eyes are going and where your head's looking, your body follows, right? So I felt very comfortable just diving head first, where all my friends were like, how do you do that? There's something about facing that fear. Facing that fear, so Julie, when you need a fear counselor, what it comes to is we need to just start facing the fears that we have in our following after God. And we need to step out. Fear of telling someone about Jesus. You know what the best thing for you to do is? Go in terrified, and all terror-stricken, the sweat pouring off your brow, just, and you feel like you're a failure type telling someone about Jesus. But then you do it again the next week. And you do it again the next week. And after several weeks of being terrified, you're going to find a little bit of, hey, I can do this. It's not going to grip you so much. It's not going to be so consuming. Mark.
When I was 60 years old,
How old?
when I was 60 years old.
60. I thought I heard 6. That's why I was checking. Okay, when you're 60.
Yeah, I read a book called Wild at Heart.
Yes, I read the book. Yeah.
I went out and jumped out of an airplane.
Awesome. I jumped out of an airplane. I was a little bit younger. I was about 24 when I did it. And that was part of it. And that was seriously still, that was part of the heights thing too. Thank you for bringing that up. That was part of our plan for myself and my friend Mike, who's now, he's overseeing this international company of Compassion First, of rescuing, he started up this ministry of rescuing female teenagers off the streets in Indonesia, in America, different places in the world. But we ended up doing that. We went skydiving, went up to the 10,000 foot mark. And you want to talk about fear? We had a guy strapped to our back. I probably told the story before, but they opened up the door and you look down 10,000. There is nothing normal about this, right? And this is a small airplane. There's a little platform about this big on top of the wheel, right? And he won't step out on that platform. What? Right? I mean, there's nothing, and I'm telling you, I did good. I did better than my friend Mike on the high dives, right? But this is a different world up here. And so you step out on this thing, and you're supposed to go like this. He wants you to hold like this, because here's our normal response. Cling to the plane! And you don't let go, and he's trying to get you to jump out. Well, I step out on this thing, well, the plane's moving kind of fast. My feet slip off, right? I am dangling, feet dangling. Right? Outside of an airplane and everything within me saying, this is not right. There's nothing right about this. And then you jump in that, but 60 years old, good for you, right? I have done it, I faced that fear, I don't have the desire to ever do it again. But it's good for us to face our fears. Some of you have fears of praying and praying to God for an hour a day. You wouldn't say it out loud, but you'd be terrified because it's going to deepen your relationship with Him, and we don't know what He's going to tell us in return. If you spend that much time with God, He's going to ask you to do something. And I don't want to do anything.
Amen.
So I'm just going to choose the path of ignorance and put up a wall, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to read the Bible. Some of you don't crack your Bibles open a lick because you're terrified of, if I learn what's being told of me in this thing, then I'm going to be convicted, and then I'm going to have to do something, and I don't want to do anything. We put up boundaries.